Hey, you guys. I am going through the Bible, the minor prophets. I haven't gone through the bigger ones like Ezekiel, Jeremiah. I've gone through some of Isaiah just from memory, and then I'll go search for it. Anyway, I was thinking about, so I started doing like a list, like say you go to Jesus on the Mount of Olives. Then you go to, say, like Zechariah 14, Ezekiel 38, and Revelation 12, 14, 16, 17, 18. I don't know. Okay, so I was trying it that way because I think it's definitely, okay, the rapture, we've always been like, oh, what is everyone going to think when we're all gone and people disappear? Well, let me tell you, a lot of Jews are going to disappear too. Not just the Christ believing Jews. They are hidden. That's the woman in the wilderness. She's going to the wilderness. So at the same time, there's going to be, I believe, Ezekiel 38. That's a 7-year thing. It has to be beginning. Okay, and then you have all the, okay, so anyway, I totally believe all these prophetic books. If once I get to Jeremiah and Ezekiel, they're all going to be the same as all the minor ones. I have lots of notes. They all match. They all fit in with what I've been saying, however I've been explaining it. I was just going to make this video to point out a few things to add that I'm still trying to place, among other things that I'm kind of, where you get to a plateau and then you need to take a break from it. Not that I'm on it all the time, but sometimes if I walk away from it and then I come back, listen to something different or whatever, I can see something better. But that hasn't happened, except for the fact that I asked Jesus, I'm like, Jesus, can you give me some kind of, like, for example, if the baby is the Christians, which it's clearly Jesus, but if you look at it this way, the woman is not Mary, but yet the baby is Jesus. The woman is a nation. The woman is Israel. So why can't, if the woman represents the nation of Israel, why can't the baby represent the nation of Christendom? Kind of, I don't have a matchy word for it, but if the woman is Israel, that's a nation, that's God's chosen people. The baby is probably Jesus's people, right? So hopefully that's how it is, because the baby is getting raptured and so are the Jews. The Jews aren't getting raptured. They're getting tucked away in the wilderness. And there are characters in all of these prophets. There are Gentiles, saints, heathens, and then the 10 tribes, the 144,000, and the 12 tribes. Okay. So those are the characters in this whole scenario. So if you also realize that Ezekiel is, and Zechariah probably, are the Jews' Revelation, book of Revelation. The Christians, we have our book of Revelation and Daniel. They don't believe in the New Testament. I think they have the New Testament somehow. They say a lot of the stuff that's in our New Testament, but they name them different books. I don't know the names of their books besides the Mishnah, but they have other books besides the Mishnah and the Torah. And I think that when those disciples wrote those books, some of those Jewish scribes that didn't believe in Jesus, they also read the stuff, and they probably put another name on it, but I don't care. That's good. So anyway, then, so I kind of wanted to make some sort of a simple template to where when people read all the books of the Bible, and I'm talking about like verses, oddball verses that you may not could fit in. I can fit them in, but I haven't fit them all in because it's a squeezy timeline. And not only that, they overlap. Some of them overlap. But so basically it boils down to this. You have the woman, Israel gets hidden. There's good and bad Jews, just like there's good and bad Christians, just like there's good and bad non-Christians, and there's good and bad atheist Jews, whatever. Over and over, I've written notes, not that whole thing, but like a few pages, I've written notes on some highlighting on these verses of some of these minor prophets. God not only is going to open their eyes and ears, which is in Isaiah, he is going to take away their sins. He's also going to take away their idols, their soothsayers, their this and that. He's just going to rip it out of their heart. They're not going to have any desire. They're going to say, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. They're going to say, mourn for him like an only child. You know, that was a statement. I've said it before. That was a statement from Jesus. I've never liked it when they are teaching eschatology. Not that they're being mean, but they always say this shit like, and I can't even say it's shit because it's in the Bible. They say it's the Jacob's trouble, and they even have a little rhyme for it. The tribulation is for the something of the Jewish nation, and it's Jacob's trouble. It's for the Jews, and they're not gonna see Jesus until they say, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. That is a statement. Jesus isn't, listen, they didn't close their eyes and ears. God closed them. They have no control over their eyes and ears, so don't be saying to me, they gotta say it. They can't say it if they don't believe it. And they'll never believe it until God opens their ears and eyes, and he said he's going to do it in Isaiah. And all these minor prophets, he's not only going to do that, he's going to rip all this idolatry out of them. Basically, like the Bible says, they all get saved, okay? Because that's just how it is. They're his people, and he closed them off, and he has been letting them get mean to and everything, and he has closed their eyes and ears so that the fullness of the Gentiles, so that all of the Jews will be saved. And some of the Gentiles. But hey, the Jews got it good because all of them get saved. Can't say the same thing for the Gentiles. So where was I going was the woman is going to be hidden at the same time the rapture is happening, and it's going to be this giant mess. There's not going to be any pity freaking out going, where'd all them people go? Oh, it must be UFOs. I don't think so anymore. I don't think so. What's going to happen is there's going to be way too much going on. There, like I said before, it is miracle upon miracle upon miracle upon miracle. And everything's a miracle and a catastrophe of miracles and good things. So nobody's going to be having time to say, where'd they all go? Some people are missing. Because there's going to be blood, fire, and billows of smoke, and hail, bloody hail, and there could be anything happening to them people. They could have been pulverized, and nobody's going to be going, ooh, what happened? UFOs? No, because there's going to be a lot of Jews missing, and that's only fair. So what I was saying is, these people, and I'm sure it offends the Jews. I, in fact, even heard not too long ago a Jewish rabbi, I think it was that Rabbi Singer that I don't listen to, but I've seen a couple of his headlines, so I'll watch a couple of videos. Well, he, I think, was the one saying it. He's like, I find that, I mean, he's kind of sassy anyway, but I mean, I don't blame him.
all my life hearing, not all my life, but when I hear eschatology, I don't like it when people want to say that stuff. And I know it's in the Bible, Jacob's trouble, but it doesn't mean it like y'all try to preach it. You know, how dare the Christians be up in here like we're all gonna get raptured and you Jews are just gonna get banged some more. They've suffered already. I've said this before. They have suffered. This is their suffering. I'm not saying all of them are going to go to the Mount of Olives and make it there. There probably will be a lot. Israel isn't 100% Jewish anyway. They got some Arabs. Of course, we know this. They have all kinds of stuff. There's atheist Jews, and that probably doesn't matter. And like I've said before, there are probably truly evil Jews like Soros or Epstein. I mean, no, not those. But like I've said in the Bible, when you start reading all these minor prophets, you're going to see the picture just like I see it. And then all these little verses, you're going to understand. And I'm just giving you a few of the little verses that I've seen that they're going to be cleansed. Their eyes and ears are going to be open. I haven't even run across that verse yet that says, "Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord." I don't even know where that is yet. I've read it probably, but I haven't even run across that one yet. I'm talking about the other ones. They're going to cry. They're going to see him. They're going to know him. And even Jesus says in their Old Testament prophets, which is the only books they read, so their Ezekiel is probably their Revelation. Zephaniah is probably their Revelation. Daniel. So they already know all this stuff. And they might have snuck a Revelation book in there and read it secretly. I don't know. But they've already figured out that, okay. And then you got the verses where we love to quote for ourselves, but they will run and not grow weary. They will some and not grow faint. The young men get weary, but not you. That is Israel. That is Israel. Because when Jesus, Jesus says it over and over, Ezekiel 38 says it, the whole world is going to see Israel get saved from the nations gathering around him. Okay, now the nations might attack him and kill some, but God is going to save them. Okay, she's going to travail for a little bit. That's repeated over and over. Travail, woman in travail. But then in Isaiah 66, 7 and 8, it says she gives birth before she even travails. But Revelation, she is travailing. Okay? So when those nations in Ezekiel 38 are surrounding Israel, that's kind of travail. And like Nathan said, and like Zechariah says, people are going to die. But in Joel, I think that military coming up. Okay, so then you see verses like God says, I'm going to give you to the Jews horns like iron, hooves like brass. Jesus has feet like brass. Then there's those two brass mountains that the horses come out of, okay? There's a lot of brass going on. And it's matchy with Jews because Jesus is there, okay? I'm jumping around, but because I get off on a tangent and then okay, so this Ezekiel 38 is 7 years. 7 years. It has to be in this Revelation, book of Revelation. Gog and Magog is even mentioned in there, but we're calling it the Armageddon. When you read Ezekiel 38 a little closer, which I listened to it again today, it kind of is like saying it, Gog and Magog, but it could be that he's jumping forward to the end of the 7 years, but I don't know. Because Revelation talks about the birds are going to eat everything at the end of Revelation, and the Gog and Magog. It's the same thing in Ezekiel 38. So, when you look at it like this, there's chaos going on all over the place. A lot of Jews disappeared. A lot of Christians disappeared. The dragon, his stars throwing him to the ground, and that could be, but not, because
God says he will draw the nations around Israel. I think there's even a verse that said God is just going to do away with their security system. I'll quote verses and I don't remember where because they don't seem that important to me at the moment until I hear them in another book and then I go, where did I read that? So if there's a way you can find them, good for you. But otherwise, you'll just have to take my word for it. But there's some verse that says he's going to take away their security system and all the nations can gather around him because God himself is going to gather all the nations around them. So great signs in the sky in Revelation when the dragon and the woman are fighting, Michael and his angels fighting, that's great wonder in the sky. Then I saw another great wonder in the sky. Then in another stuff, they're saying it goes dark, but yet in Ezekiel it's light. That's because when the nations are surrounding and that wonder going on in heaven and it's dark and hail and blood, when that's all over and they've stabbed themselves, then it's that lightness. It's that light, and then it's bright light at evening, and that's probably for a day. And then you can kind of go from there. Well, that's what happened up there in Revelation with the woman and the dragon and the baby. So then once the woman is put in the wilderness, okay, so even when, just remember, Satan won't do anything. Because I didn't finish, I interrupted myself. I tried to kind of connect that, Satan has been cast to earth, so that's why all the nations are round about them now. No, we can't ever give Satan credit when God said he himself is going to gather the nations. So when the nations are gathered, there's probably a fight going on in heaven with the Michael and the angel and the demons and the devil and the woman so God has already gathered the nations, and then it's so dark, and then it's so yucky, and then earthquake, because there's power going on up there in heaven. And then you get your earthquake and all this. The nations are surrounded. You get all this imagery from Joel. They're climbing the walls. They're not going to die when they fall on their swords, and you can't break their ranks, and all this. And it mentions stuff like this all the time. All these prophets are repeating the same stuff in different imagery. And it all fits in to the Sermon on the Mount and like Revelation, woman. I didn't see that until recently. It fits into Zechariah 14. It fits into Ezekiel 38. They all match. And then these little verses will come along. Things like Gentiles, saints, heathens. You got your 10 tribes that got to be gathered. You got the 144 that got to be marked. The 2 witnesses are in the beginning of the trib. So see, there's a lot of action going on. A lot. And Revelation, I listened to it again today. I think it overlaps some of that stuff. In fact, it says in there, Jesus with fire in his eyes and feet, bright brass. That's a description in Zechariah where there's a wall of fire around Jerusalem and Jesus is there. Yeah, to me. I would love to read every book of the Bible and point it all out. That would take so long. So I can't do that. But look, even Google is confused, I think. So I looked up, because I hadn't read Revelation in a long time, and I knew there was a beast coming out of the abyss, and Satan is cast down. I'm like, what's the difference? La, la, la. So I asked it. I said, what's the difference from the dragon being cast out of heaven, coming down, and then a beast from the abyss coming up? I mean, they're both Satan, right? One's coming down, one's going. I'm like, what is that? So it says here, Satan loses his access to heaven and is cast down to the earth. This takes place in the middle of the tribulation period, she says. No, it takes place in the beginning. I think all this crazy, because, oh, okay, listen. She says it takes place in the middle. How? How? I mean, is Israel then the woman? That's in the beginning of Revelation, pretty much. So the woman is. Anyway, I'm not going to try to go through every nitpicky little thing. So I'll lose my train of thought. So this says this takes place in the middle of the trib period, giving rise to a period of intense woe on the earth because he knows his time is short. So she says it begins right after the first 3.5. We call that mid-trib. So, okay, it begins at the beginning of the Great Tribulation. So after 3.5 years of tribulation, the first. So then later on in Revelation, it says the beast ascends from the bottomless pit. The beast often identified as the Antichrist, rises from the abyss to persecute the church, kill the 2 witnesses in Jerusalem, and demand global worship. This occurs during the second half of the tribulation. See, she words it different. Why didn't she just say this occurs in the middle of the tribulation? You can't have both these in the middle of the tribulation. Okay, well, what I looked up is Revelation 11:7. And what it says. For context, this passage is in the book of Revelation, which describes the end times and the trials of the tribulation. In the verses preceding and following this, the text mentions that the bodies of the 2 witnesses are left in the street for 3.5 days before God resurrects them and takes them up into heaven. Now, I've always thought that the 2 witnesses, this happens at the end of the trib. Well, they're here for a good 3.5 years. I mean, it says here 3.5 years. They don't get resurrected and bam, War of Armageddon. They get resurrected and everybody, they die and lay dead for 3 days. And everybody's giving gifts like it's Christmas time. They're so happy they're dead. And then what? Armageddon happens? I don't think so. I think the 2 witnesses show up in the beginning of the trib, right when the Jews are getting hidden. And then that enclave of Jerusalem, the woman is hidden. And it's kind of like the Garden of Eden. And then you read all the verses where they're coming up and down. And God says, I'm giving you corn and wine. And I'm giving you water. And I'm giving you all these things. Now, some of those may not be that. Majority of them are. Some of them are for the 1,000 years. And those are pretty obvious. Because I've run across some of them. Those are obviously for 1,000 years. But some of these that people are tacking on 1,000-year millennium are not. That because you can't be traipsing back. Okay, so anyway, I was trying to give you some new stuff. So I was trying, and maybe if Jesus helps me again, he will give me a template to where my template, if I gave it to you, and then as you read all these prophets, you'll plainly see that that's how it is, because they all make sense now. As soon as you know Israel is hidden, Israel is supernaturally provided for. Jesus said, okay, I know we all say Jesus, okay, Ezekiel 38, everyone's going to see Jesus. Everyone's going to know it's God. Jesus says over and over in Revelation and in the Gospels, everyone's going to see him on a cloud. Everyone. It's not a secret thing. It's even somewhere other places. The whole world is going to see Jesus. All right? It's not a secret. Nothing's hidden. I don't know where people get that. Everyone's going to see it. Same thing with Ezekiel. Everyone's going to see it. Everyone is going to know. Every knee will bow. Every tongue will confess. They may not accept him, but they're going to confess. Just like the demons even had to confess that he is the Son of God. You see what I mean? But not all the humans, okay? Because it says in Revelation, everyone's going to find out who wasn't written in the book of life because they took the mark of the beast. There's some people that are just vessels of destruction, and you don't know who it is. They're goats. They are whatever. Okay, so think about this for a minute when you are reading about the baby in Revelation. So whatever he resembles, but the woman resembles Israel. So if the woman can resemble a nation and the Jews, which is Mary gave birth to Jesus, but the baby is clearly Jesus in the text. But the woman clearly is not Mary giving birth, because even the Jews wouldn't agree with that, because the Jews don't agree with the New Testament and the Jews don't believe in Jesus. So why would they even agree with Revelation being the woman being Mary? So why then would God write it down that the baby is Jesus, but yet the woman isn't Mary? So there's a lot of times Jesus went back to heaven, okay? He was born. He got crucified. When he died, he went to hell for 3 days. He came back to earth. He didn't go to heaven. He went to hell, took the keys, death. He took the keys of death, hell, and the grave. He came back, remember he said, Mary, don't touch me. She wanted to hug him. And he said, don't touch me. I have not yet ascended up unto my Father. So who knows what that means? But then she runs off and she tells everybody. So Jesus is left all alone. She ran off. He obviously went back up to heaven to the Father. And he comes back down again. Shows up in the upper room. Okay? He even showed up on that road when the two of them were talking about something, and he's like talking to him. And then he says, I open their eyes so they know who I am. Just like at the tomb, Mary thought he was the gardener. And then he opened her eyes and he knew, well, as soon as he said Mary, but she didn't see him at first. And some of these shows will depict it like she's got sun in her eyes and she couldn't see his face. But no. She saw him. But he had closed her eyes to see that it was him. He disguised himself, just like he disguised himself while those two guys. Okay, so anyway, he came back to earth after he ascended to the Father. He comes back. Then he ascends again after walking the earth for 40 days. And the angels tell them, why do you gaze up and wonder at seeing Jesus rise? In like manner, you will see him again. Now remember, he's talking to Jews who believe in him. I mean, I don't know why, but it's for a reason, but I'm not going to get onto that right now. But anyway, because I'll get sidetracked. I don't even remember the point of that, but so the flood was 40 days and 40 nights in water. We have to be not of flesh and bone, but of spirit and water, born again. Born again. In the flood, 40 days. It's 40 weeks to have a baby. So then you got 40 days of the flood, and that ark is in the womb in some water, okay? And then 40 years of wandering, and then when they finally get out, what happens? They go through water. God again splits the water for them, but it's the Jordan. It's the Jordan River. God splits it for him because he wants him to go through water. All right. And okay, it's also interesting that Satan spews out water, but it also says, I saw a beast coming up from the water. So I think when you read it, it's something like he gets cast down to earth. He finds out, like he almost didn't realize he was in earth or got thrown out of heaven. And then he like finds out he's on earth and he's pissed. So he sends a flood to go after the woman, right? Well, to me, it does say he was cast down to earth, not cast down to water. But it kind of says the same old theme where he's coming out of the water, he's coming out of the water, he's coming out of the water. And then here he spews a flood at her. Flood is usually water. So I'm wondering if maybe he was cast to earth near some water, sucked up a bunch of water, and started spewing it at her. Now, that could be metaphorical, but I just wonder if that has anything to do with this baby, Jesus, baby, maybe the church, those verses, flesh and blood can't enter. And then in other verses like flesh and bone, but you have to be born again by water and spirit, meaning like water, baptized, water, spirit. Baby is born again, okay? Jesus can't be born again unless God is duplicating something from somewhere up there in Revelation, where that woman is giving birth, but it ain't Mary. Okay, so if that baby represents born again, but it is Jesus, and Jesus doesn't need to be born again, but we are in Christ. We are born again in Christ, but also Jesus is of the Jews. He came from a Jew. He is a Jew. And the woman up there is a Jew because she's Israel, because she's God's people and she's God's land. And she is born again. Christians come from Jews. So that Jewish nation is giving birth to, and I mean, all the verses about travailing, but I like the Isaiah 66, before she travailed, she gave birth. I know they talk about that as being 1948, but God repeats stuff. He repeats Sodom and Gomorrah. He repeats Babylon a lot in Revelation, matter of fact. So Babylon's going to happen again, y'all. And so is Sodom and Gomorrah. And so is a lot of other stuff. So I think I ran across, what was I reading? I think I shared it, like Obadiah, maybe it was somewhere else, that it talked about the 144,000. Yeah, it was in Revelation. They follow him wherever he goes, and it almost sounds like they're up in heaven with him. But see, this is where when Jews, they don't read the New Testament. So their tribulation, which they're looking for the Messiah, they're getting it all out of their Old Testament and their old prophets. So what was I just saying? So like we read in our New Testament, the 144,000 follow him. They have a new song. Plus you'll read in Zechariah, they're singing in the valley, in the mountain of Olives. And I just think Jesus is caught up. The baby is caught up. Then the woman is mentioned, okay? The woman is pregnant. It could be a picture of way back in Genesis, because the Jews give birth to Jesus. The Jews give birth to Christianity. It's a picture. She's pregnant with Christianity. She gives birth. After that baby's caught up, Christians, hopefully, then Israel is the focus. What was I saying? I was going to go somewhere with that, darn it. So the Jews, okay, so I was pointing out how Jesus comes up, down, a couple times, right? Well, Jesus went up if he's the baby, and we're the Christians that go up and get raptured, okay? It don't mean he can't come back down, and I think he does. If that is the church going up, and all those 7 churches in Revelation, I think those are tribulation churches, and the ones that repent, those are probably the beheaded saints. Yeah, I don't think they're ever. I think that has nothing to do with before the trib or before the rapture. I think that those 7 churches that get left behind, that resemble us, all of us, if we're part of 1 or 2 or 3 or 5 of those, we better do what it says. You better repent. You better do whatever. Maybe you're going to die, like the one in Smyrna. So I think those 7 churches are also in Zechariah. It says in Zechariah 6, when it's starting to describe the 2 olive trees, the 2 candlesticks, right when he starts describing that, he says, what I see is a bowl on a lampstand. A bowl. And in that bowl are 7 candlesticks with 7 pipes. Those are the 7 churches in Revelation. And those are the 2 witnesses. And I think those 7 churches are going to either be part of the heathens, unless they repent and stuff and do whatever that says to do, then there will be the bedheaded saints. The one in Philadelphia, I don't know. I'm just still, look, I got a lot in my brain, and I'm not a computer, so I can't remember everything I've read. But I have kind of a template, and once I get it down, even before my template, I can read these, and I can pretty much understand where they're going and what's going to happen to them and when, and except for a few minor details. Okay? Maybe not minor, but a few things only. I got the gist of it. Israel's going to be hidden with some Gentiles. Yeah. Some Jews, probably the good Jews, the observant and good ones, kind of like good Christians are going to be raptured, but not the ones in the parables. Those Christians aren't going to be raptured. Probably same thing with the Jews. So anyway, the Bible says in Isaiah and all these other minor prophets, there's going to be Gentiles with those Jews hidden. Okay, I've already gone over that. So you're going to have some Gentiles and Jews hidden in the mountain. You're going to have Christians that have already gone up. And then you're going to have Gentiles that are getting beheaded because they won't take the mark of the beast. I don't know why they don't get to go into the mountain. I don't know why they don't get to go get raptured, but something's going on. So I don't know. But the 2 witnesses show up in the beginning, and they probably have something to do with those nations surrounding. And even when the nations surround them, I think there will be some Jews that die. But maybe they're not Jews. Maybe they're all the Arabs that didn't get hidden in the mountain. You can Google it. What percentage of, how many Jews are in Israel anyway? And what percentage of the population of Israel are Jewish?
About 73 to 74%
Okay.
of Israel's population is Jewish. The rest includes Arab citizens, around 21%, and other minority groups, such as non-Arab Christians and people of Jewish descent, who aren't considered Jewish by religious law.
All right, so around 20, they're saying 73.2 to 74%. So let's just say 75%. So 25%, and I don't know the population. What is the population of Israel?
Israel's population
10. What is 25% of 10.2 million?
The answer is 2,550,000.
That's a lot of people. So 2,550,000 people around Jerusalem and Israel will be killed. 2.5 million aren't Jews. Okay? If anybody gets slaughtered, it's probably, like Nathan was saying, a lot of people are going to die. They're going to be taken captive. You can read that already in Zechariah. It's true. And Joel and other ones. So it's probably not the Jews. It's probably 2.5 million of whatever the other population is. So plus the ones surrounding them are going to be turning on themselves and killing each other. But the Jews will be safe. They'll be hidden. Okay, and you can read it throughout all of these minor prophets. Okay, so that is okay. And then in the Sermon on, is it the, not the Sermon on the Mount, but Mount Olives, Jesus backtracks. He he starts off with, oh darn, that's not the one I marked in, but he starts off something, and then 11 through 20, the first few verses he's talking about, okay, then he says before all this happens, so he's talking about what's going to happen. Then he says before all this happens, they're going to deliver you up to the synagogues and you're going to get blah blah. Then he goes back to up here in verse 11. And he starts finishing the tribulation, the great tribulation, and all that he's explaining from verse 1 to 3, and then 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 7 verses he's describing. See, and that earthquake he says, but he says before that earthquake, they're going to this, that, and this. He says you're going to see wonders in the sky and in the stars, moon, and the heavens. Famines, pestilence, earthquake. What do earthquakes cause? I had realized this, and God confirmed it through a video. Probably, what's her name, who does all this natural disaster stuff. And I think she was saying something, and then I was like, I was thinking the same thing. When Jesus said earthquakes, famines, and pestilences, he doesn't mean literally famines and pestilences. He means earthquakes. So what do earthquakes cause? They destroy the water quality. They destroy things. People starve. That's famine. They cause pestilence because of contaminated water, because the sewage overflows. People walk in it. Maybe they've got a sore on their leg, and you got feces soaking in feces. You know, whenever I see these floods, like every year when certain states flood, and you see people walking through that, I'm like, that's a lot of toilets that overflowed, you know, when you're walking through that. I'm like, I would not walk through that. Now, if I had to be in it because I'm being drowned and swept it away in a tree and hanging, I mean, fine. But to go walk through it, that's gross. But there's a lot of overflowing sewage going on in those floods. And that destroys grocery stores. It destroys. So that's what Jesus means when he says, you know, earthquakes are going to destroy buildings. You're going to get diseases. Because not just from the water, but I mean, in another book, he's calling plague, Zechariah, a plague, a plague, a plague. And he's saying plague, but he doesn't really mean a plague. He's calling it, I'm shooting at you, is what he's calling a plague. So, I I forgot why I was going through this, but I was just saying, okay, Jesus explains it all in Matthew 24, the Luke 21. He explains everything that's going on in every gospel. He has just condensed it so teeny weeny tiny. But if you go by way I'm doing it, you'll see it in every minor prophet. I even see it in Isaiah all the time. I shared those chapters with you, 24 to 35. That's everything. And I haven't even gone over the rest of the book. But I've gone over a lot of Isaiah in my life. But it matches all these scenarios. So all those 1,000-year millennial verses they say, but yet they can't really say definitively that it's the 1,000-year millennium because there's a bunch of stuff going on that they don't know where to fit it. That is going on in the mountain where the Jews are hidden, and some Gentiles for some reason. I don't know which Gentiles. I don't know why. But they do say that we know God is with you. Probably because all this was seen by the whole world, and the whole world knew that he was God, and those Jews repented and they mourned. They looked upon him whom they have pierced, blah, 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 and they want Jesus, and they get saved by Jesus, and he cleanses their blood, like the last verse of Joel says. He takes away all their sins. He takes away all those desires, those evil witchcraft, and you'll read that in those whatever book it was. He takes all that out of them, and then he's hiding them. And these Gentiles that take the skirt of a Jew, those are probably the Gentiles that are standing beside them when all these things, these wonders in the heavens are happening. And they're like, anyone who calls upon the name of the Lord shall be saved. And they are saying, I'm going to take you. I don't want you to leave my side. Please take me with you. I know God is with you. And they probably, just like in Isaiah, you will run and not be weary. You will not grow faint. They're running to Israel. They're running to the Mount of Olives. They're running from all over the country, all over the world. They are running. They're flying. It says, those who wait upon the Lord will mount up on wings like eagles. In Revelation, God even gives the woman wings, 2 wings like eagles, where she flies off to the wilderness. He's doing the same with the Jews. In Joel, it says, your old men will dream dreams, your young men will see visions, even on your maidservants I will pour out my spirit, and will prophesy. That's the Jews. Because also within this are going to be priests and stuff. You'll read it. I'm just saying stuff that I remember. But once you start reading these books, you'll see it too. What I'm saying is a Bible verse. So, they're crying under the altar. Those, what are they called? Martyred saints. They're crying under the altar up there in heaven. When will you avenge me? God says, wait. He gives them some robes. And we're always saying, those are the tribulation saints. Not necessarily, but maybe. Because the tribulation saints that have to be beheaded, they deserve it. They got left behind for being bad. Those those saints up there that are crying under the altar, they got murdered for the sake of preaching the gospel of Jesus Christ. Okay? So don't mix those two up. You got these tribulation saints who became tribulation saints because they got left behind. They were obviously bad somehow. But they decided they wanted to serve Jesus and accept Jesus. Some are lost. Some are bad Christians, like in the parables of the bad servant. Some are totally lost, don't even know about Jesus, and they're going to accept Jesus. They're going to have to be beheaded. Both of them, both types are going to be beheaded. They're not being beheaded because they were out preaching the gospel. They aren't brethren in bonds. They are tribulation saints because they didn't take the mark. Okay? Those ones crying under the altar, When are you going to avenge us? He says, we have to wait till the other saints. Okay. I think those, so when you're in the mountain, okay, when you're reading the Minor Prophets, it talks something about like priests fast and mourn and pray and all this. I think they're inside the mountain. I'm not sure because like there's really I don't know. So when God is up there saying to them, give them white robes, you have to wait, those saints that are going to die for preaching the gospel, I'm not real sure who they are. I think they have to do with some Jews, maybe the 144,000, because they're following Jesus wherever he goes. I don't remember. I don't know what my thought was on that and the Bible verse that made me think. But anyway, so if I haven't thoroughly confused you with bouncing around, I'll say then, what else? Stars. Okay, so we have a lot of themes in the Bible. Okay, so the first 3.5 years when it all goes down is the most chaotic, but it's not necessarily the most painful. Okay, but it's a lot of wonders in the sky, a lot of bloody hail, fire, darkness. Still them Jews for 7 years are going to be burying, and not burying, they're going to be burning that fuel probably in the mountain, because this happened when Jerusalem is surrounded, not Israel. When Jerusalem is surrounded, okay? And you can even go to those other, like, there's verses that say, like in Zechariah, measure the scroll, the scroll, the flying roll. That is the same measurements as the porch. I forgot the name of it. The outer porch, the outer courtyard of the temple, like the outer court of the Holy of Holies. And, it's going to go into the home of those who swore falsely. In other words, they are hypocrites. They're part of the 7 churches, okay? They're one of them in the 7 churches. And that scroll is going to land in their house, and it's going to devour their house. Anyone who lied, it's going to land on one side. And anyone who swore falsely by my name, God said, that means they're a hypocrite. That means they're a phony. They're a goat. They're fake. They're a tear. They're a weed. That flying roll is going to come into their house, and because they swore falsely against God, about God. They are the false shepherd. The arm is withered. The right eye is black. Well, that's Satan, actually. But anyway, how was I saying? But I forgot what point I was on. But I'm just saying, I think all this action is happening, like even in Revelation, hearing it today again, like Babylon is also that harlot. It basically said it said the woman is the harlot. Okay, so now they're crying. Those they killed her and ate her flesh. They burned her and ate her flesh. The 10 kings decided they hated her. They destroyed her, and they're the kings on the beast's head, right? But yet you read about Babylon has fallen in an hour, who is the whore now all of a sudden, okay? And she fell, but yet everybody's crying. But yet it said they wanted her dead, and they burned her, and I was confused at first, but it's the kings that wanted her dead, not the merchants and the consumers. The consumers and the merchants, the one that would bring it to the shops on the seas, overseas, you get your stuff, and they're merchants, and they're doing business. They're the ones doing business. They're the business, and then they're the consumer, the general public, the population, consuming and feasting upon all the riches from her goblet of gold that she's a whore. Okay? She's destroyed. She is also Babylon. It says right there, the woman is Babylon, the harlot. The kings want to destroy her, and then just be in cahoots with only the beast, the Antichrist. He's half man, half devil. He's Satan. Because he comes up from the abyss. Satan is cast down. The first 3.5 years, Satan and a third of his demons are roaming around here, wreaking havoc in that war, right? And then the second 3.5 years, mid-trib, the beast. This is Satan coming down. He got kicked out of heaven. Satan is on earth. He's messing around for 3.5 years. Satan. Then you got some regular man who is not Antichrist yet, but he's one of the kings, okay? Because Satan is on earth. He's making the one world government. He's setting everything up. It's kind of peaceful. He's got his 10 kings, Satan, and he's getting it all, da-da-da-da-da. Well, then the beast comes up from the abyss. That is the beast. I guess it's different than Satan. And notice, it's also called perdition. Who is Judas? Judas is called the son of perdition. It said the beast comes up from the abyss, from perdition, or out of perdition, or into perdition, or something like that, okay? It uses the word perdition in the King James. Just think of Judas, the son of perdition. Okay, so that's a human. Judas is a human. It could be Judas. He's the human. Satan and Judas is probably not, but I'm just saying that. It's a human and it's Satan. Bam. Mid-trib. Antichrist comes alive. His head wound and everything. And yeah, so I don't know. I don't know if I gave you it. All I can say is it's hard to explain this or describe it unless I had notes that I didn't make any good notes. But I thought it's been a while since I came back on here. And it's not like I've been studying nonstop or anything like that. But, I mean, yeah, I just thought I'd check in. And I think I'm going to try to make a better template. So we have a theme of wonders in the heavens. From darkness to hail with blood, fire, smoke, stars, earthquakes. Then you got your ground, earthquakes, famines, all this, okay? It's all in the Sermon on the Mount. Jesus is telling him when the trib is going to begin. He tells him, he gives a little in between, and then verse 11, maybe I'm thinking of Luke 21. I think it's something like that. Then he backtracks. He tells you, then he backtracks. Says before verses 1, 2, and 3. Before verses 1, 2, and 3 happens, this is going to happen. So before the trib begins, he says, this is going to happen. Then when he's finished saying about that, then he goes back down to talking about the trib, which hopefully you won't be, that little section won't be in the trib. Okay, you won't be in the trib. But then he says, everyone will see me when I come. Everyone will see me. Not everyone saw him go up after he walked the earth for 40 days. No one saw him go up to his Father after Mary saw him at the tomb, and he said, "Don't touch me. I haven't been ascended to my Father yet." No one saw him ascend. The next time they know it, they saw him in the upper room. Only the disciples saw him ascend. But when he comes back, everyone's going to see him. He's going to have fire in his eyes. He's going to have feet of brass. See, these things are always a theme. The stuff in the sky, wars, hiding, rapture, safety, calamity. It's a pattern in all of these minor prophets. I'm telling you, they're all saying the same thing, except for maybe a couple of them. Like, maybe I can share you some of my notes. I just even went through a few books. So I started probably with Zephaniah. There's a lot. Okay, obviously it reminded me of somewhere in Isaiah. Okay, Zechariah, not by might nor by power, but by my spirit, says the Lord. He's talking about Isaiah 40. He's going to give them wings. They're going to fly over to the Mount of Olives when it all goes down. That's their rapture. Like, that rabbi was right in that video with Nathan. He said, we're going to all of a sudden have supernatural strength, because he knew about Isaiah 40. I'm telling you guys, their Old Testament prophets are their end time books, and they know them very well. And Jesus giving us our New Testament to go along with the Old Testament, Jesus is going to make sure it matches theirs. He's going to make sure it does. And Jesus is telling disciples who believe in him. Jesus isn't telling Jews that don't believe in him. He's telling Jews that believe in him, so that they're going to know that in the future, they thought it was any minute now, but I mean, like, for us reading it in the future, the saved Jews, they get raptured, yeah. But it's also, Jesus knows that the Jews that their eyes and ears are closed till the end, he knows that their Old Testament book is basically going to be saying the same thing to the Jews who don't believe in Christ. The Old Testament prophets, he knows, is going to be explaining to them. That's why they think it's rude, probably, if they ever heard us saying, oh, the Jews are going to be left to tribulate. They think that's rude because they don't see it. No, they read Isaiah 40. When their Messiah comes, they know they're safe. They don't know what you guys are talking about. I don't either. I don't like that. Jacob's trouble. Oh, unless you say the name of the Lord. Oh, you're going to be butchered like you've been butchered for 6,000 years. That's rude. They have suffered already. I've said it over and over. You take any of these bad, heinous verses and you put them on the world, because the Jews are done suffering. When Jesus cracks that sky open, these Jews, their suffering is over. And that's what this Old Testament prophets tell you too. And all the Jews know it. All the observant Jews that know their word, they know it. Now, that Nathan kid that saw all those Jews die, it was probably those 2.5 million Israelis that aren't Jews. That's probably who he saw die, because all the Jews are going to be running for the hills, Mount of Olives, hills. It's now hills because it's broken in half. It's plural. Yeah, so I don't know if anybody's been reading and checking me on this stuff since I've been talking about it like 11 days ago and before, and I found out more stuff. And then if you've tested it by reading them, I always turn to Judges. It's so weird. If you've been testing it out yourself, oh, well, I had some of it written down. But my notes are so sloppy, I can probably barely read them my own self. And I don't even, okay. Land to a plane. Okay, I already kind of went over, okay. Land awake, burn. Zephaniah. I read Zephaniah. Okay, Zephaniah has a lot of good stuff. Consume all and stumbling blocks and idolaters. I think that's, yeah, God is going to take it out of them. The day of the Lord at hand, sacrifice with the wicked, leap, yeah, over the thresholds. See, it's talking about evil people or evil Jews or evil Gentiles, whatever, from the fish gate and sheep gate. Now, see, you're reading this again from Zechariah. Fish gate, sheep gate. Okay, punish with candles, settled on their lees, without drink wine, or live in their houses. Yeah, because they're going to be destitute, and Israel in the Mount of Olives is the one's going to get all the wine and the food. It talks about it all the time. Okay, darkness and alarm against the fenced cities, killed, Lord's wrath, land destroyed. Now, also in Revelation, it talks about, it says to the angels, don't touch anything until we have sealed the 144,000 in their forehead. So, in other words, hold back the wind, I think it says, and it says, don't damage the trees or anything, okay? So, if you want to fit in like Ezekiel, surrounded. See, people don't do that either. I've never heard of a eschatology teacher doing this stuff, where, they'll read something, and what if your mind is sitting there listening and saying, what did I just say about, like if the angels are holding back the wind? I mean, okay, never mind. That's not a good example, but you might be thinking to yourself of another verse, and you might be saying, well, where does this verse fit in? If everybody's taking the mark and there's major destruction, what about a third and a fourth and a 2/3 and a this? I mean, I would do that, and I have been doing that when I read it, except I haven't read over. I was listening to Revelation over and over like 2 weeks ago, and I just did it again the other day. So, but Revelation is kind of weird the way it'll bounce around, but yet in Revelation, a couple of verses in the beginning, I totally see that. I think it's Revelation 1. I probably took a picture of it. Revelation 1. Well, like I already give you the one that said, Jesus, fire in his eyes and feet of brass. That it to me is Zechariah 14. That's Jesus dwelling there. Jesus goes up, comes down. He is in the Mount of Olives with them Jews because they're worshiping him. Yes, and he's feeding them. It says it all the time. So, Revelation, behold, he comes with clouds and has made us kings and priests unto God and his Father. Wait a minute, where was I? Okay, so there was another verse in here that I'm like, yeah, that's happening. Same time Zechariah. So, and then you take Ezekiel. A lot of these things are happening at the same time. Same thing with these vials. I was listening again and I thought, okay, that vial is happening right when over here in Joel and Zechariah or Isaiah, somewhere I heard that. I know when they're doing that vial and that vial and that vial and that bowl and that. And to me, I don't have it all timed. That's what I'm saying. If there was an AI that with all these tiny obscure verses that maybe people overlook all the time, and they're fit in, and they take things like, oh, that vial sounds kind of like what they did over here, but yet it couldn't be there because 2/3 is already destroyed, and this over here, it's not 2/3 yet, but it's not like blah blah. Do you see what I mean? That may not be a correct example, but that's what I'm saying. It's like they'll teach something, but you're saying, well, how can that be? Because over in this book, the Egyptians and the Assyrians are going to be coming back and forth year to year. The whole world can't be destroyed. So is that before the vials? Is that before the this? Is that before the seals? Oh, and there was a whole bunch about the seals. I don't know what I was thinking anymore, but it's something about these seals are very easy to understand. But anyway, all right. Well, I just wanted to come back on and say hi, I guess, because I don't know if I've said anything new other than this to me is the deal. This is the deal. So, seek meek of the Lord, Gaza desolation. Okay, so see, like in Zephaniah, it's talking about Jacob and all this. But when sometimes I think it's like the non-Jews of Jacob is Israel, okay? So in Zephaniah, maybe if it's saying Jacob, it's saying Israel. But when you're talking about that Mount of Olives in Zechariah, it only always says Jerusalem. Ezekiel 38, Jerusalem is surrounded, not Israel. I don't think. It's only Jerusalem is surrounded, not Israel. Okay? So in Israel, you got 2.5 million non-Jews. Okay? Call them Catholics, Christians too. But if they're good little girls and boys, they'll be raptured. But I'm saying there's 2.5 million non-Jews there. And so when you think of those things, that's who Jacob is now, probably, because the real Jews are hidden away. When it talks about they say they're Jews and they are not, see, that to me is, I don't have a definitive answer for that yet, but I know that I read that verse in Zechariah. No more Canaanites in the house of God, it said. So there's a lot of fakery, garbage crap going on, and it's all going to be sorted out. And so Zephaniah, gather nations, that's another theme. God is always gathering nations. Gathering nations, gathering nations. See, that is the theme. You think it's only in Ezekiel 38? No. It's in Joel. It's in Zephaniah. It's in Isaiah. He's always talking about gathering the nations, great signs in the heavens, judgment, hiding and salvation, saving, protecting, okay? And then repetition, like Sodom and Gomorrah, Babylon, okay? Takes away sins, that's in Zephaniah. All earth devoured, that's repeated. The earth is being devoured. It's in Isaiah. It's in Revelation. Okay? Daughter of my dispersed. He's always talking about he's going to bring in his daughter Zion, his daughter Israel, his daughter. He has an everlasting covenant. Okay? The Jews get saved. The Jews won't go through tribulation. When it says it's Jacob's trouble, it means Israel is going to be, a ruinous heap. It's going to be in war, but they're probably not the Jews. It's the non-Jews that are living there. God talks about heathen. Okay? The Jews have already suffered for 2,000 years with Pergams, anti-Semitic. They're the biggest racially, you talk about racist, I mean, they're the original ones who are racist against. And when all is said and done, their Messiah, Jesus, shows up at the rapture, they're getting hidden, every one of them, unless they're a Soros or an Epstein. And or what you call it, not written in the book of life, like in Revelation, because they're a goat or a tear, okay? But they're a Jew. Not many Jews are going to be left out. They've already suffered. They've already done their suffering. All this history of their suffering is for the world. You just put the world in place there because it already happened. It's past history. If there's a future prophecy of destruction of Jacob's trouble, yeah, it is a future prophecy. But no, there won't be no Jews around. They'll be in the Mountain of Olives, okay? And I don't care if the Mountain of Olives isn't big enough. It's big enough because God has no time, no space. He can supernaturally make it as big as like 5 times bigger than this whole planet inside that little valley. So, because the beasts are going to be lying down, and the only ones that are the 1,000-year millennium is when it says the whole earth or the whole world. Okay? If the context isn't talking about the whole world. Now, I know in Zechariah it says Jesus is going to rule over the whole earth. But that's not the 1,000-year millennium. But he's still ruling over the whole earth. But anyway, the Jews, Jacob's trouble, yeah, Israel, that state, that country is going to be suffering. But none of the Jews are. It's the non-Jews on Jacob. The non-Jews are going to be in trouble. They're going to be in big trouble. So is all the ones taking the mark of the beast worldwide. You know, just because God says stuff about Israel that's a future prophecy doesn't mean it's the Jews. If it's an end time prophecy that hasn't happened yet, it doesn't mean he's talking to the Jews. Because some of these, there's one of these books that I was reading, how they were worshiping idols. It wasn't even the Jews worshiping those idols. It was the Canaanites. And then Jesus started talking about the Jews, saying, you're good, this. It's saying, but the Canaanites, but you'll miss it if you're not careful. And you'll think that God is talking about the Jews worshiping. There's plenty of other times they were worshiping idols, yeah. But there's other times that they're not the ones. And it's somebody else, and maybe some of the Jews did, but some of the Jews didn't. There's always been priests and Levites and that didn't worship, but some, like in Ezekiel 8 or 13 or 18, that's what it is, where the Jews, the priests were putting idols in there. And I heard a great sermon who pointed that out too, how even Christians do that. The Jews were putting idols in there in the Holy of Holies or something like that. Christians do the same thing. We are mixing stuff. We're going to listen to secular music while we got a cross up here. So if you got your temple, whether you call it your body or not, or whatever temple, but you're also going to have pagan garbage in that temple. Yeah. We're no different. No different. The Jews adopted some of that pagan stuff. How many Christians adopt into their Christianity? And we think, we have not. No, we haven't. Yeah, you have. You just don't even know it because you're so conditioned to it. Now, maybe you weren't blatant, like, this is Buddha right next to my cross. Maybe it's not that obvious or blatant, but we all do. Anyway, okay, I guess that's it. And if there's any sense out of this, I'll come back on. Hopefully, God will help me quickly to make an outline, because I want an outline that if you test my outline and you take my outline, I've thrown it out here all jumbled up for you, but if I did it a nice little step-by-step outline, the way I see it when I read, And if you took that outline and you started reading the prophets, you'd be able to fit everything. You would. You'd be able to fit it all in a consecutive order. And you won't have, like, I don't have every single thing. It seems like there was something else I was going to say, that how everybody, maybe it was the UFO thing. Oh, and then I was reading this. I told you how this, even Google doesn't make sense. And she's going by the people that teach this stuff. So anyway, I gotta pee. And like I said, if I could read every book, that would take, I did make a video and I didn't upload it. It was almost 2 hours long, and I was reading Isaiah 24 to 35 to you and pointing things out. And I'm like, no, because it took so long and it wasn't like a bunch of stuff. So, but I mean, one of these days when I'm all freaking out like I do all the time here, whenever I read this, when I listen to these online, I'm sitting here going, I mean, my face is frozen like that with almost every book I listen to over and over, or I try to do one at a time so I don't get them confused, but I'm literally listening to them like this. Or my eyes will be like this. And I'm just sitting here almost frozen. I'm like, that's there. And I may not remember where I read the verses or heard the verses, but they're in my mind. When I hear them, I get the gist of them, and they're in there. And I'm like, that matches. And it's like every verse they say, they all match. Now it's easy to read all these prophets. To me, I know I keep saying that, but yeah. If you don't understand, then you can go back to my other 2 videos. You can go back to my other video where I was reading Matthew 24, which I was, yeah. I mean, I stand by all the videos I make on the one on Ezekiel. I may have changed a little bit, but I haven't said anything heretical. But it started coming with each video. It seemed like I stacked on more things, more information. And now I'm just waiting for Jesus to help me with an outline, so that when you do read these prophets and you find one of those odd verses that, well, where does that fit? And then you'll have the outline and you say, it would be fitted in there. That's when that happens. That happens during this time. And that happens during this time. And that happens during this time. There's just a few things that are in the whole shebang, you know? And as far as going up from year to year from Egypt and Assyria, I'm not quite sure yet about that. But a lot of the other ones I am. Okay? All right. Well, God bless you guys. And talk to you later. Hopefully. Bye.